mostly non-Jews, and many other Jews who were not in any way traditional or observant, and my half of us, which kept kosher. And it was a wonderful thing to be able to travel and to be, to feel that you were part of your Jewish tradition and able to be Jewish at the same time, part of this amazing organization called the Boy Scouts. One of the funniest parts of it was, though, however, we would travel during the day, and we would be on a bus, and we were traveling from New York to Colorado. That's half of America. That's 2,000 miles. That's 3,000 kilometers. Probably more, close to 4,000 kilometers. A lot of traveling on a bus. And we would see things along the way. We were stopping in a lot of cities. We would pull into a city after traveling 6, 8, 10 hours on the bus. And 13 and a half buses would go to the armory. Now, the armory were like buildings for the army, where, when America has troops that are stationed in the United States and they need to have a place to sleep or get meals or get equipment, they have what are called armories. And these armories of the U.S. Army were putting up the scouts who were traveling all over the United States to Colorado, including our Shayara, our convoy of 14 buses from New York. So we would come into a city. I remember for some reason Kansas City stands out in my mind. We pulled into Kansas City, and the 13 and a half buses stopped at the armory, and everybody except of half of Troop 62, my half of Troop 62, my two patrols, got off the bus and went into the armory. And in the armory, they slept on our sleeping bags, and they slept on the floor, and we did army food. But what did the other half of my bus, Troop 62, do? We were then driven to the JCC. And in the JCC, right, a lot of the women had cooked for us the most incredible meal, and we had this night after night. JCC is the Jewish Community Center, like the Matnas of various cities. And night after night, while everybody else was getting army food and sleeping on the floor in army barracks, we were in JCCs, often sleeping on beds, and getting home-cooked meals every night.
I'm sure that did wonders for the Jewish, non-Jewish
relationship with the truth. So it's interesting because at the organizational meeting, the people in my particular troop, there was a given that half the troop would be Shomrei Shabbat and kosher. The other half of the troop was given a choice to either make it one troop which was totally Shomrei Shabbat and kosher, many non-Jewish boys who were eating regular food and not in any way involved in Jewish tradition. And the parents voted, including many of the Jewish parents, to keep the troop into two separate units. And when we started getting the special treatment in city after city as being observant Boy Scouts, all of a sudden the people that voted to keep us separate regretted it. They said, "Oh my God, are we dumb? We could have been getting home-cooked food in the JCC instead of army food in the armory." But it was a very, very wonderful reminder of how special it is to be Jewish and to be able to be a participant in society. And the Boy Scouts is an international organization which gives you that opportunity. Anyway, when we got to Colorado, I discovered also, now here we have 10,000 Boy Scouts. I'm just taking a number up, but it must have been at least 10,000, 8,000, 10,000. And every day in Colorado, they had food for all these scouts that were coming for the week's activities in Colorado Springs, the Jamboree. There was what's called a commissary, which is like a kitchen where everybody from every troop had to send a representative to pick up the food, which you would then prepare over your own campfire in your own troop's campground. But there was a special commissary of kosher food. And every evening, one of us would go to the kosher commissary, and you'd meet kosher troops from other places all over America. There weren't that many, but there were a few Jewish boys in kosher troops, and we would all meet together getting our kosher food for the evening meals. The other very exciting experience was that the following year, a few of us were invited. I have it here somewhere. Okay, so different one. On our way to Colorado, to the Jamboree, we actually spent 3 days hiking in the mountains of New Mexico at one of the, I think if not one of, maybe the most prestigious scout camp in the United States, which is called Philmont Scout Camp. I had actually been at Philmont 2 years earlier in 1967, when my father, as I mentioned earlier, was a scout leader and an Eagle Scout, had been invited to participate in a course at Philmont for scout leaders. And the fathers who were the scout masters and scout leaders were having intensive training for those 4 or 5 days in scout leadership. And there were provisions for the families as well. So, the wives and the children of the scout leaders had all sorts of activities, but I got to spend a week in Philmont back in 1957, hardly realizing that I would be coming back as a scout on the way to the Jamboree 3 years later in 1960. So I've been to Philmont twice. And in 1960, we actually did a 3-day hike into the Rocky Mountains. But this belt, which I wore, I guess, when I was a scout, and as long as it still fit me, Abba, I don't know if you saw that, it doesn't fit anymore. It once did, but it doesn't. This is from Philmont. I got this, and this was the belt that I always wore on my scout uniform after that point from Philmont. And I actually have a neckerchief from Philmont, which was this one over here. Philmont, New Mexico. And this was the official Philmont neckerchief.
Whoa.
Cimarron is the name of the city in New Mexico. Cimarron, New Mexico. In any event, I was, so this is probably one of my most special neckerchiefs. And this is also a very special neckerchief, although I was not there personally, but there was a big jamboree in 1964, 4 years later in Valley Forge, and if I'm not mistaken, the 100th anniversary of the Boy Scouts had their jamboree back in Valley Forge again. So this is a place, it's in Pennsylvania, where the Boy Scouts have gone very frequently. I also brought along with me my Scout handbook, and I see some of you have the modern version. Hold off, I'll take questions at the end, okay? This is probably the 1956 or 1957 version, but it has my name in the cover, Peter Abba.
It's probably the It's like a
1948 to 1950.
Here it is, here.
5th edition, 8th printing, February of 1955.
How do you like that? Okay, 1955. And the other thing that I am pretty proud of, I have 2 other things that I brought to show you. I did bring another uniform. I also have an Explorer shirt, which I did not bring.
No, Eric.
So the other evening, we invited Nadav to our home because I have my collection of neckerchief slides. And Nadav, I see you're wearing. Stand up here. Wait, do you mind one?
Wait, sure.
Nadav is wearing the slide from the Jamboree, it looks like, in Colorado in 1960. So this is a pretty special one. Put on the seat. Okay.
I want that.
You should be careful of that.
Eric's gonna get his hair done.
And one of the things that we love to do, I'm going to hold questions to the end, okay? One of the things that I love to do, especially when we met scouts from other troops, and I'm hoping that this is just the start of something in Israel, that you are really the pioneers of what will grow into a very, very, very sought after and special movement here in Eretz Israel. But we used to, when we met other scouts from other places, used to love to trade. And you would trade your own patches. So I have my whole collection of some of the patches that I traded. This was from when I went to Canada. I was a representative of the United States at the 3rd Canadian National Jamboree, which was in 1961. Yeah. So I have a lot of my Boy Scouts of Canada.
You guys, just so you understand, when you go to a jamboree, one of the things that people do is they allow plenty of free time to do all kinds of high adventure, but also plenty of free time for scouts to trade. And you trade patches, you trade neckerchief slides, you trade council patches, which is these are the long ones that you have here. And you also trade pins. You get pins. All the scouts come to the jamboree with their council's special patch, and they trade it, and you trade, and you trade, and eventually what happens is, word gets around that there's like a special patch out that's like really rare, that everyone wants to try to get, and you end up trading lots and lots and lots and growing your patch collection, and eventually you have tons of different patches and you can collect them and show them. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, now the other thing I mentioned what an amazing opportunity it is to learn skills that you'll take with you for the rest of your life, and to meet other people who are similarly involved in the Scouts. And have kind of experiences you would not have otherwise. For me, it opened up a very, very special door, actually. I thought I had a picture on my phone, and I don't. That I was invited one summer, the New York area had a series of had a whole section of scout camps called 10 Mile River Scout Camps. Anybody heard of TMR, 10 Mile River? And so I went to TMR. Did you? You also?
I went to Camp Kunita. I got my
I was at Kunita.
got my lifeguard certificate.
So Kunita was the kosher camp in the camps of TMR. But one thing that happened to me at scout camp, I think it was probably the summer of 1959, before the Jamboree. I think it was 61, I can't remember. Is that somebody had asked me if I would like to take part in training to become a speaker for the Boy Scouts. And I actually took a course with other scouts in New York in public speaking, and it opened up an amazing door for me because I was part of a division of the Scouts in New York that was called upon from time to time to meet special dignitaries or give special awards to people. And so I thought I had the picture of what Avi does, right?
Which one?
Bob Hope, you have it?
Just open it up on Facebook.
Or what's his name? You sent me, I have it here.
So I...
Bob Hope and General
I was asked to do a
MacArthur.
commercial for Boy Scouts on television, and until I got there, I didn't know who it was that we would be meeting. It turns out that we were doing a commercial with one of the famous television personalities of the 1960s named Bob Hope. It's a name nobody here knows except for perhaps Neil.
Oh, come on, I know Bob Hope.
You know Bob Hope. Okay, you
Very,
know Bob
very
Hope.
famous star. This is Bob Hope. This is Bob Hope, and this is
Peter Abel.
this young man right here. I'll come around and show you. This is Bob Hope, and this is Peter, right there.
That's him?
That's Peter.
That's me at the age of 15.
Basically, can be the dog. Sit down, I'll show you. This is Peter. That's Bob Hope.
Take a picture.
It's pretty cool. We'll send it to you guys. Keep your agrees. Take a seat. I'm coming around. I'll come around. Bob Hope is the guy in the middle, and this is Peter.
So the other...
That's Peter.
So the other personality I remember, actually, this was really very exciting because we were not told who we were going to meet that day, and it was a day.
Israel quote? You know the Bob Hope Israel quote?
No.
The only thing chicken about Israel is their soup.
He was a comedian, very, very famous comedian. The other exciting day for me, which turned out to be a little bit disappointing because I remember the excitement, but it was nevertheless exciting. We were told to meet at a very, very famous hotel in New York City called the Waldorf Astoria. It's a big fancy hotel. There's a Waldorf now in Jerusalem. It's part of the same chain, one of the big fancy hotels in Jerusalem. We had to come in uniform, spruced up, dressed nicely, to film on Together with Emil's family in 1957. And we have been friends. This is 1957. How many years ago? A lot, right? That's 65 years ago? 64 years ago? 1957. Oh, 65 years ago? Okay. So Emil and I have been friends since the Boy Scouts and since growing up together. And so we've maintained that friendship. We're not only Facebook friends, we talk to each other quite frequently on the phone. When I traveled to America, if I was in the area where he was living, I would often stay with him. There's a place to stay, we kind of catch up. The point being that you never know who of the friends that you're making now will be with you as close friends for the rest of your life. Because that's what the scouting movement did as well. We just had so many things that we shared in common, and the friendship bonds that we established through being together in the Boy Scouts and doing so many activities together, participating in so many things together, really became the glue that held our friendship together. So you are learning skills, but you are also making friends, and many of those friends, or some of those friends, or one of those friends might still be a friend of yours 40 and 50 and 60 years from now, even though it is really kind of hard to think of what things are going to be like even 2 years from now, much less 50 years from now. But my friend Emil and I have been friends since the Boy Scouts. And again, he's right next to me in this picture, which just went blank. He and I have been friends from the Scouts and shared many, many scouting experiences, and then a lifetime of friendship since the time. So you are about to, or you're in the midst of the beginning of an extremely exciting adventure, one which I think every one of you will benefit from, each in your own individual ways, each of which can make you tremendously proud as you celebrate your own achievements, advancing in ranks and advancing in your skills as a scout. And I'm like, I should have brought also. There was a Jewish in America, there was an award called the Ner Tamid Award. So I have a Ner Tamid, I was part of the Order of the Arrow as well. But I'm really very excited I'm excited for Nadav, who's my grandson, who is now having a chance to experience what I experienced when I was his age. I'm excited for your leadership, for Eric and Abby and Moshe and for Neil and for everybody who's involved. Lord, in your leadership. I'm excited for you because you're embarking on an amazing, worthwhile, and special adventure in your lives. One which will enrich your lives and which you will carry with you for the rest of your lives. So,
Thank you, Peter. Everyone, now is the time for you to ask Peter questions.
Abba, you showed all the patches?
Yeah, after we answer questions, we'll have a couple of minutes where you guys can come by and take a look at all of the fun, cool stuff that Peter brought, all the treasures that he brought, and he can explain if he wants. If you guys have any questions, which I definitely do, now's a great time to ask.
I was going to say, it was this one here.
Is it working?
No, this is
Leather workshop.
public speaking. Public speaking. Great question.
Courtney spoken.
And these I got at Scout Camp, life saving. I almost did not get life saving, by the way, because we were at Scout Camp. This is really a funny story. Being at Scout Camp, I had a chance to get life saving and swimming and nature. I got it. So what's the first thing you do before you jump in and try to hold the guy to save him?
Ask him if he's okay.
Speech.
You can try to reach out in some ways.
Speech, row, go with support.
Okay, so it was turn to throw, and the only thing available was like a kickboard, right? So we had been trained how to, throw the kickboard, and then, hopefully he would be able to grab onto the kickboard. So with my luck, the kickboard hit the water, skimmed, and boom, opened up a gash in his forehead, right? And he had to go to the hospital for stitches, and I said, oh no, I will never get this merit badge. I just failed life-saving. But I don't remember his name even, I just remember like the sinking feeling that I will not get life-saving this time around. But he was very magnanimous, very good about it, and I did get life-saving. But I'll never forget the horror when I suddenly said, "Ah!" It hit him in the head. That is not good. All right, any other questions? There's more to this. My mother was a Scout mother. And she was a very active partner, along with my father, in the Scouts, much as you are, Adi, with your husband. It was really a husband-wife team. And I think for my mother, especially after my father had died, it was a very important act of her own pride to feel a part of my own growth as a Scout. And so it's not that I was lazy or that I didn't know how to sew, but my mother really...
They're sewing very well. I was looking at this kitchen.
100% my mother.
Did you ever encounter anti-Semitism?
Never. In the Scouts?
Yeah.
Either I didn't or I wasn't aware of it. I do not ever believe that I encountered anti-Semitism, and I did encounter anti-Semitism in other areas.
Interestingly enough, by the way, just an anecdote about BSA, Boy Scouts of America was very much a trailblazer with a lot of equal rights, a decade before the movement, in terms of allowing minorities to be full parts of the Scouting organization. What comes to mind is the picture of him with MacArthur has an African American or black scout in Sea Scout uniform also, and that was, when was that picture taken? 57?
Yeah, that's probably 1962.
62. I mean,
because Kennedy was president.
Right. So I mean, like that. That we're talking about the heat of the moment, which means that a decade before, Hispanic, Black Americans, Jewish was even before that, were very much participatory in Scouts long before it was even cool. Right like that.
On the contrary, I discovered through my being actively Jewish in the Scouts that it was possible to be part of the general Scout society in this case, and still at the same time maintain my own standards of kashrut and Jewish tradition. And I never experienced anything but total respect and total acceptance. Yeah. So
Growing up in the heart of America, right? Middle America, Bible Belt, people there, especially the Scouts, had a huge affinity for Jewish Scouts. They thought we were like the coolest thing in the world because they thought we were right out of the Bible, like really hardcore. First of all, we want to thank Peter for taking time. And Peter, as always, is more than welcome to join any scouting activities, ceremony. In about a month and a half, we have our very first ever court of honor. The ever. And we appreciate your support of us, and you guys should understand again that you're part of something very old, very special, and all over the world. And you're connected to people like Peter through that brotherhood of scouting. So I first of all want to give Peter his first Israeli flag. You can choose to put it on your uniform or not. And I want to give you. That's right. Only if you sew it on yourself. That's right. And I want to give you an official Boy Scouts of Israel. Blue and lighter blue. First ever.
Really cool.
Custom made.
Custom made.